Hello everyone, RaviTeja here, and I have Pavan with me. We're back with a fresh new episode. Of course, I think there's some amount of delay in terms of coming back with the review of the fourth test between India and England, which took place at Ahmedabad. But having said that, we genuinely thought it would be a day four or a day five finish, but it ended much before than what we have all expected. Thankfully, not much. Whining and all from the English media this time, mainly because India happened to bat really well. So we'll be discussing all those aspects of the game, wherein India flourished, who all flourished, how good were we with the ball, and how bad England were in the entire Test series. I have Pavandeep Bhaiya with me. Indeed, very glad. Welcome back, Bhaiya. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Ravi. Hope the same with you.
Certainly, yeah. And how happy are you with the fourth Test? What do you think of, you know, uh, about what actually took place in those just 2.5 3 days? What's your view?
First of all, as a cricket fan and as an Indian fan, I'm very happy that India won that Test match and sealed their place
Uh-huh.
finally in the World Test Championship final. I think it was a lot of hard work and grind that went behind that. And because we played the maximum number of matches along with England, it took us that much bit longer to secure our place in the final. But having said that, they truly deserve to be in that final. If there is, one team that has performed consistently in the last two-year WTC cycle, home and away, it's India. Apart from that, only series lost against New Zealand and New Zealand. And coming to this test match, a lot of things went in England's favor to start off with from the toss and the kind of side that they picked for this match as well. I was a bit perplexed when they stacked their playing 11 with a lot of batsmen. They included Daniel Lawrence in place of a bowler. And if you see, technically, they went in with only three frontline bowlers in the form of Anderson, Bess, and Leach, if you would want to call Bess a full time bowler with his inconsistencies. And they would obviously taken this fact into consideration that Ben Stokes was okay to bowl the amount of overs that he did. Otherwise, they would have not taken that decision. So they were banking on Stokes to be that second seamer. But still, I felt that they were a bowler short. Um, and after having stacked their playing 11 with so many batsmen, they would have hoped to win the toss, which they did. And the last thing they would have expected is to get bowled out for 205 on a first day wicket with no particular demons in it. And I think that the Indian bowlers responded beautifully on the first morning. Uh, Everybody expected the spinners to come into the play as soon as possible, but it was a great cricket wicket which
True.
provided assistance to everyone who was willing to bend their back as far as fast bowling is concerned. And the spells delivered by the likes of Mohammad Siraj on day one uh, added uh, that flavor to the Indian bowling attack. And from there on, it was just the handiwork of both Axar and Ashwin to make sure that England did not get away from them in the first innings. And Washington Sundar also provided that crucial breakthrough by dismissing Ben Stokes, who looked the best in the series in that innings. He scored a half century, was looking good for many more until the straighter delivery again had him. Um, and I think they wanted to be more proactive and take the spinners on. That could be judged from how Jack Crawley got out. It was the right mindset, but probably not the right kind of execution from their end. And again, they were just fearing when would the straight delivery, be bold and take care uh, of their defenses and so on and so forth. So I think it was more battle of attrition and battle of mind as far as England was concerned. And once they lost that, the writing was pretty much on the wall. So, only Ben Stokes and Dan Lawrence, who came at number seven, provided some kind of resistance. And once they got out for that paltry total, their only hope was to bowl out India cheaply. and they were in with the sniff when India batted at 146 for six. Again, uh, it should be a cause of worry for the Indians that in
Mhm.
this series we have been 4 or 5 down for nothing in most of the innings, barring that innings from Rohit Sharma, which saved us in Chennai.
True.
It was very, very, very peculiar to note the kind of conservative approach that we had on the second morning when Pujara and Rohit started off the day. And I think we did not score more than 50 odd runs in that first session. And I think they were just trying to play the waiting game and tire out Anderson and Stokes because they knew that once they were tired, they had to bowl Leach and Best. And they're trying to make sure that they save their wickets and uh, pile on the misery in the future. But that was not to be. And Stokes especially bowled brilliantly on the second morning. I think he bowled virtually unchanged for the most of the morning session. Just goes on to show that never say die attitude that he always shows and answers the call of his captain. The game was in a very balanced state at 146 for six, and then uh, two youngsters again, Pant and Washington Sundar joined forces, and we also got unfolded a very mature innings from Rishabh Pant. He took his time early on in his partnership with Rohit Sharma, gauged the wicket, and then once he was set, and he must have scored probably his lowest 15 in his Test career so far. And then once he crossed 50, and once they uh, faced the second new ball, it was a calculated gamble that they took, and it was one of uh, most breathtaking counterattacks that we have seen in the recent times uh, against the second new ball. Because he was expecting that the English bowlers would be bowling a particular line, and especially Jimmy Anderson, and he just wanted to disturb him of that line and length. And as he mentioned as well in his post-match conference, that their main aim was to first get on equal terms with England.
Mhm.
And by the time they took the second new ball, India were just 5 or 6 runs ahead of the English score, and in no time they raised away to a lead of 50 or 60, and from there on it was game, set, and match for them. It was very nice to see him score a century eventually. He's been out in the 90s for 3 or 4 times now since that Aussie tour. And from there on, once that tempo was set, young Washi also played some beautiful strokes, attractive strokes, especially the back foot off drive that he scored off James Anderson. I think was the shot of the series, let alone the match for me.
Very true. Very true.
Uh, and then on the third morning, he had that you know good partnership with Axar Patel, again 100 runs. And once that second partnership also happened, it was uh, a final nail in the English coffin as far as that test match was concerned. The only downside being that the last 3 wickets did not hold up to make sure that Washi scored his first test match century. But his 96 is worth a century at any point of time. And to do it twice in 2 months, we know India 180 odd for six at the Gabba, and both he and Shardul Thakur had that match-turning century run partnership. And here also he justified his selection ahead of somebody like a Kuldeep, um, where he can offer various skill set with both bat and ball. So
Also, the
uh,
first test at Chepauk, wherein he played that amazing 85.
yeah, again he was left stranded high and dry in that innings. Otherwise, India would have narrowed down that lead in that first test match as well. Uh, and he's proved to be a valuable asset, in the longer format of the game. Uh, it'll be interesting to see going forward if India is going to judge him in Test cricket by the number of runs he scores or by the number of wickets he picks up, and pick him or drop him from the playing 11. I definitely seen playing the third spinners, but in home conditions for sure. But he might be a valuable asset overseas as well when somebody like Jadeja is not available or Ravi Ashwin is not available for selection due to injuries or any other
Mhm.
reason. And then once India had that humongous 160-run lead, it was just a matter of time. And England had lost the battle in the mind, as I mentioned earlier. That second innings also just showed us that how meekly they caved in. and Axar and Ashwin split up those wickets amongst themselves with a 5-wicket haul, and only Dan Lawrence again proving to be useful with the bat for them, and they won by innings and those many runs. It was again a convincing victory, and I think nobody could point out any fingers toward the pitch or towards the conditions, because this test match also finished well within 3 days, but it was again the evident gap in the skills level of both the team that eventually showed up. All in all, again, a very dominating performance, I think, at home. And as Shastri and Kohli mentioned, that the first test was possibly an aberration. And I remember when we were doing the preview of the series as well, I mentioned that the only drawback I see is the kind of small window that the Indian team had between the Australian tour and this home series. They did not get enough time to recuperate. If they would have got more time to recharge their batteries, I'm pretty much sure that we could have seen a 4-0 drubbing in this series, but nothing to take away from England as well in that first test match. And it's again just went on to show that they have so many gaping holes as far as their batting is concerned. And if Joe Root does not score, then they find it really difficult to come up with scores in these kind of conditions. And the only time Joe Root walked up to bat after the end of the 20th over was in that first innings in Chennai, and he hit a double century.
True.
And the rest of the time, the top order just folded inside 10 overs, and the result is there for everyone to see. So, all in all, it was a great spectacle for the crowd as well at the Motera Stadium, and the icing on the cake was India, qualifying for the World Test Championship finals, and then Virat Kohli also, I think, becoming now the captain with the most number of home wins for India. And I think all eyes will be on that final now in the UK in June.
So true. In addition to probably a couple of pointers, in addition to what you just mentioned, I think you pretty much summed it up beautifully well. And at about 140 for 6, it was definitely concerning. First innings, still kind of trailing by about 50, 60 odd runs, and our tail was not necessarily tested. So it was concerning because you never know what would necessarily happen. Probably a Ahmedabad third test would again, first innings would repeat, and it was kind of panicking. But the way Rishabh has batted, he's batted very, very sensibly in the beginning, and of course, showed his own natural cranky self, and then went for all those glory shots. I think that reverse sweep off Anderson in the 81st, 82nd over, swinging ball with a new ball. Harsha described it so beautifully, and I think that shot will pretty much remain for probably generations to come. And I think people will look back and say, okay, he did actually pay that when he was kind of in his 80s. So beautiful batting. Of course, disappointing for Washington, but of course we all aren't we all very obsessed with records? 100 runs is definitely a key milestone, something that is very important for someone who's kind of stranded for a very same reason the last time around. Overall, yeah, putting up 365 pretty much sealed our game right there, because second innings, England batting, I think it was more of a formality. I thought they will just definitely kind of pack themselves up within about 150 or 170. So what is expected has pretty much happened. What was not expected for our tail to wag, was our tail to wag. And of course, we expected probably Ishant or Siraj to just stick around for some more time, but nonetheless, as you rightly mentioned, I think overall, when you look back, there's nothing much to actually complain. That's one aspect that I wanted to discuss. Like when we talk about someone like Axar or probably even an Ashwin, right? Man of the series definitely has good solid 32, 33 wickets, and then Axar picks 27 wickets in his 3 tests. Amazing, mind-blowing stuff. Very good. Of course, the conditions did favor. But having said that, what I wanted to give a very special mention to was Rohit Sharma and his, you know, 345 runs that he has put across 7 innings. Uh, good to see Virat also mentioning that the 160 that is scored at on the Chennai track was probably equal to 250, and I think that pretty much sealed our game right there. Amazing innings, and of course, Rishabh Pant has been a great revelation. 270 runs, scored 10 sixes in this test. Uh, Talks a lot about what he's capable of. Of course, his 90 odd was quite disappointing in Chennai, it's his natural game, and that's how pretty much he kind of gets out, and it kind of pisses off many people. But having said that, not many complaints out there. I'll say Rohit had a pretty better tour than Root, mainly because of whatever Root has scored, right? While he's the highest run getter the series, he scored pretty much 60 to 65% or 70% of the runs in one single innings. And Hesley has not contributed across the 8 innings or 7 innings that he's played. So the reason I think we've pretty much won was, of course, the way our spinners have spun us to glory. But I'll say equal credit, if not anything more or less, to the way our batsmen have, if not at least the batsman of Rohit Sharma, has kind of you know uh, announced his re-arrival after not a very happy Australian tour. So it was indeed very, very lovely to see what has happened there. So what's your views on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rohit Sharma was the standout batsman if you take both the teams into consideration. And you rightly mentioned that Joe Root scored most of his runs in just that one innings, and he was found wanting at the other. Um, Rohit, pretty much the way that he played on difficult pitches and in difficult circumstances, stood out and was head and shoulders above the rest of the batsmen from either sides. Um, and Pant, I think he's going to use that template that we saw in that fourth test match, wherein he can initially take up his time and make up for lost time in uh, virtually in a jiffy. Uh, I haven't seen such a counter attack from a wicketkeeper batsman since Adam Gilchrist.
Mm-hmm,
Especially that innings that he played against India in Mumbai in that epic series of 2001.
mm-hmm,
And just that audacity to reverse flick the bowler of the caliber of James Anderson shows his mindset that is more concerned about playing the ball rather than the bowler. And you got to have patience with a player like Rishabh Pant because for example, if that reverse flick did not come off and he was out, he would have had many people criticizing him that the game was in such a delicate state and he got out playing that kind of a shot. So it's going to be uh, a world of both the ends with him. Sometimes his risks are going to come off, and sometimes they are not going to come off. But you know that the day it comes off, he's going to win you the match single-handedly. Something similar to what Virender Sehwag did. You had to be patient with him, and you know that he's a genuine match winner. And the day he comes off, he will make sure that you win the match hands down.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Uh, uh, However, the opening slot, the other opening slot for India, Shubman Gill did not have a great series, and then the middle order is a bit of a worry.
true.
I hope they get back into the groove. The likes of Pujara, Kohli, and Rahane were expected to offer more with the bat
Mm-hmm,
in home conditions, uh, so they might need to tighten up their game as well. And like you mentioned, it was a dream series for Ashwin. He scored runs, picked up wickets, and picked up his eighth Man of the Series award, which is like a record for any Indian player now.
mm-hmm,
Even better than a Sachin Tendulkar or Virender Sehwag. So they'll definitely go down as one of the greatest cricketers and bowlers India has ever produced. And Axar Patel was absolutely wonderful as well. The conditions did favor him, but still you've got to make sure that you pitch the ball in the right areas. And his experience in domestic cricket has held us in good stead. And I think with him performing and with others performing as well, it just goes on to show the kind of bench strength we are developing now. For every position, we have a backup. Say for Ravindra Jadeja is not fit, we know that Axar Patel can come into the picture,
Mm-hmm.
Washington
Very true.
Sundar can come into the picture, and all these new heroes, newfound heroes, Mohammad Siraj, Axar Patel, Washington Sundar, Shardul Thakur, might not be even playing in the World Test Championship final, when all the big boys are back and all of them are fit.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that, uh, something similar to Australia in the late 90s and most of early 2000s, that there was a time when in Australia it was said that could put out two playing 11s and they would still perform in the same manner on the international stage. And I think same kind of bench strength is now being developed by India as well. So that's very heartening to see. The more the pool of players that we have, it's definitely going to be a nice headache for selectors, the captain, and the coach to put forward the best field, the best playing 11 out there on the field. But it's a nice headache to have rather than being short of players and not knowing whom to play and whom not to play. So I think that was the main takeaway. The kind of bench strength that we are developing for all kinds of conditions is very heartening to see. And uh, as I mentioned, World Test Championship final. Even if something untoward happens in the World Test Championship final, I think India will still remain as the best Test team in the world as we speak today because of the kind of consistency that they are showed in across all conditions. And the upcoming series in England and later in South Africa this year might be defining. If they go on to win those two series, I think you can then put them on that pedestal along with those great teams of West Indies and Australia uh, of the past.
Oh yes. So quickly talking about the Championship final, and I'd say a very good positive news that we get to hear is that the venue has pretty much changed from Lords to uh, Southampton. Thanks to Southampton's better bio bubble conditions, I'd say, within Hilton Hotel right beside and whatnot. I personally thought, facing someone like a Neil Wagner or even a Tim Southey or maybe a Jamieson would be very tough on a Lord's wicket with all the swinging and the movement and whatnot. Of course, you can't predict when the clouds would be and whatnot. But I personally think Southampton would also pretty much pose very, very, very similar threats. But having said that, I think it's a better venue to definitely have. Uh, uh, Mainly also because I think the last time we played there, I mean, in the World Cup, we didn't necessarily play in the Lodge, but at Southampton, we played against South Africa and won it well, and also against Afghanistan, which I kind of watched it live, and we pretty much won it. Of course, wasn't a very great, inspiring batting performance, but same goes with the 2018 Test against England, wherein I think we lost by about 30 odd runs with maybe Moeen Ali did really well that game, I remember. So overall, I think it's a welcome move, definitely. I mean, not probably, it would have been iconic for us to kind of play at Lodge, but at this point in time, I'm desperately in need or probably just waiting for India to lift a World Test Championship. And I think, take a bhaad mein gaya all this glory of Lodge and all first. Let's kind of, embrace the better conditions of the two. Uh, Coming to, of course, I think that's pretty much on the venue, but I think playing 11 is something that we'll necessarily be talking a lot, mainly because of the bowling artillery that we're going to get back compared to a fourth test in Australia or fourth test in Ahmedabad. Now, I think we'll talk about any Ishant, Bumrah, Shami, Umesh would be available. Siraj, I don't think, of course. So we're talking about Saini, Thakur, and maybe even Bhuvi may get a chance. We never know because this guy has joined the team back again. He's apparently doing well, and of course, English conditions he can swing ball both ways. So it's going to be a very very tricky situation. Like how I was kind of mentioning the other day, Shardul Thakur, despite his heroics of about say an 8 for innings, 8 for in the game, and also 70 odd crucial runs in the game, right? He may not actually get to play Test cricket again. Perhaps you never know with the kind of bench strength, like you rightly pointed out. So, but overall, I think World Test Championship final, the batting pretty much selects itself. The trick would be about maybe when Hardik Pandya would he be available and will he be the fourth seamer, and what would be the combination? It would be very tricky. But also we got to be very, very concerned of the fact that it's a full IPL this time around with decent amount of travel, let's face it. So, uh, it's a different picture that we're going to perhaps see before the World Test Championship final. And I just hope all our playing 11 are pretty fit. And I wanted to take your opinion. I mean, uh, what's your take? I think what would your bowling combination be, considering the batting would something be pretty much certain? And I personally would not, think twice about not selecting Shubman, not selecting Fuji or whatever. I think we just need to go ahead with for one more game. But what do you think about the bowling lineup?
Yeah, just before that, you were mentioning about the venue for the World Test Championship final. It's almost confirmed that Southampton is going to host that because of the proximity of the hotel within the stadium complex, so on and so forth. And we can also understand that in the first place, Lords was allotted that final because that is the ground that is allocated the final for any new ICC tournament that comes
Mm-hmm.
into the picture because of the history attached to it.
True, true.
First three World Cup finals were held in Lords. However, that being said, it'll be interesting to see how the test match at Lords pans out between England and New Zealand because before the World Test Championship final, they are slated to play a meaningless two test match series. And the first test match of that series is to be played at Lords and second one at Edgbaston in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
So if all goes well in that Lords test match, then I just don't understand why they moved it to Southampton. But again, it must have been because of the logistical issue that you were speaking. And yes, and June is like early part of English summer, and both Lords and Southampton will offer the same kind of challenge for the batsman with respect to the swinging and seaming conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Although historically, the Southampton track at Rose Bowl has offered assistance to the spinners as well
True.
in the county championship circuit, and that has a history of helping out spinners. The last time when we played them, we know that Moeen Ali outbowled Ashwin and took them to victory in that test match.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and with respect to India um, and their playing 11, it all depends upon how the workloads are managed during the course of the IPL. We've got the England white ball series, and I'm expecting most of these players to be rested for the ODI series against England. Well, then uh, uh, again in the IPL, all of them are going to be playing for their franchises. It remains to be seen how that workload is managed. And again, we're going to be spoiled for choices come the World Test Championship final. The IPL final is now scheduled for May 30th, I believe, and then 18th is when Test match is starting. So we've got 2.5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, we'll spend some time in quarantine in the UK as well. The batting, as you mentioned, rightly selects itself. Although I will reiterate that it is our batting that will decide whether we're going to win that match or not. Because if we put runs on the board, I don't think our bowling is incapable of taking 20 wickets. So uh, they will surely be on top if we get enough runs on the board, especially in that first innings.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Pujara, Kohli, and Rahane, they select themselves because of the kind of experience that they have. And even if they have, sort of a lean IPL, we would still go ahead with at least four of these, considering the experience that they have in their careers and also playing in the English conditions. Um, as to who will partner Rohit, I think Shubman, Mayank, or KL, whoever it is, whoever is in better form at that point of time, I think they will take the punt with them. So somebody like a Mayank Agarwal had a stellar IPL and is in good form. He can also be playing in that 11. So, uh, and the bowling, when it comes to the pace bowling, I think if everybody is fit and firing, I don't see them going beyond Ishan, Shami, and Bumrah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the backup will be, we have a nice backup of Bhuvi, Umesh, Siraj, and Shardul. And I'm pretty much sure that they'll be traveling with an extended squad. And Ashwin obviously will be playing as a frontline spinner. And the only point of contention I see is whether to play Hardik Pandya or Ravindra Jadeja.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ask my opinion, I will play Ravindra Jadeja hands down across any
Absolutely.
condition now. Uh, you got to back your three frontline seamers and uh, expect Jadeja and Ashwin to be handy with the ball as well. So Pant coming in at number 6, and then Ashwin, Jadeja 7 and 8, and then the three bowlers. So playing with two spinners and three frontline seamers, that is the way I would go. Three seamers, as I mentioned, first choice Shant, Bumrah, Shami, but if any of them is unfit, then probably go into the reserves, and we have a lot of options over there as well. So, but I definitely think if we put runs on the board, then it's going to be very difficult for New Zealand to beat. Who I think will go in with a four-pronged pace attack, the likes of Saudi and Bolt, the two seasoned campaigners, and then backed up by Kyle Jamieson and Neil Wagner, with Mitchell Santner being the sole spinner, I think, in their lineup. So they'll also go in with five frontline bowlers, with Mitchell Santner being in the all-rounder along with BC Watling. And we need to, get cracking and open up their batting over there. So, but New Zealand also will be quietly confident. They will play those two test matches as a good dress rehearsal for that World Test Championship final.
Mhm.
And moreover, if New Zealand want to consider any other conditions that are similar to theirs when they travel overseas, I think England is the one place that they would come closest to their conditions. So uh, that two test match series will definitely give them a good head start in getting adjusted to the conditions and so on and so forth. But again, it'll boil down to be who performs well over those period of 5 days. If you ask my personal opinion, I would want that World Test Championship final also to be a three-match series. To give a fair run to everyone, because you're playing, over a course of 2 years,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
want your, championship to hinge on one match. But such are the times that we live in with tight schedules. So let's hope we have a good cracking game, and whoever wins will have the honor of being the first ever World Test Championship winner.
Very true. Actually, I was having a very similar discussion with one of my friends the other day, and he kind of suggested that we should have a kind of a round robin, and then decide the World Test Championship winner, whoever finishes off, uh, on the top of the table. But see, what we have to also understand is that you'll definitely not see an India versus Pakistan home or away series, or and there are a few factors considering the timeline is 2 years and whatnot. But the point that you highlighted was very true. A three-match series would be amazing. What would also be better is to have an home, away, and a neutral leg. That would, I think, like how it is in a probably in a football rubber, right? So just a cranky thought, and of course, food for thought. Why not? So of course, the New Zealand tour of England is definitely a meaningless series. I don't see the point. Like how you rightly pointed out, okay, there's good amount of exposure that the English would definitely get. But having said that, nothing much to discount uh, our set of boys, and especially when they'll be facing many of the New Zealand bowlers in the nets this time around. So it would be, at least as part of the IPL. So it would be a very interesting, uh, I'd say, coming 2 to 3 months. Of course, we're going to be busy with our podcast as well. Uh, Final thoughts. Yeah, IPL is back to India again. Uh, I think we have about about four venues: Chennai, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Delhi, and I think towards the last end, I think there's about Kolkata and Bangalore as well. With all your knockouts and playoffs at Ahmedabad. Good to see this back, but I think there's no home and away game as of now. I mean, there's no home advantage at least, but there are home and away teams in a neutral venue. So, and I think it's very good and impressive scheduling that has necessarily taken place. Uh, what has happened with PSL should not ideally uh, replicate here or on those lines, and it's very important for us to kind of curtail on travel is what I thought, and hence maybe those 4 to 5 stadiums in Bombay and moving the playoffs would be amazing is what I initially thought. But it's a daring move, I'd say. But because the pandemic is still not over here in India, uh, yeah, but would still be interesting to see how the operations are kind of and logistics are kind of handled here. What's your view? Yeah. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I have a bit of mixed feelings when the IPL schedule came out. Obviously, everyone knew that it was going to be challenging from a logistical point of view to, uh, schedule all those matches. Uh, and apparently, Sunrisers Hyderabad, Kings 11 Punjab, and Rajasthan Royals voiced their opinions with the BCCI when their home grounds were not listed as venues. The rest of the five franchises were. And it's also very level playing field when you see that none of these franchises will be playing matches in their own home stadiums.
Hmm.
That's one positive part of the schedule. Again, you see Ahmedabad not only hosting the playoff matches but also a considerable amount of group games as well, and that would not have happened. Certain Jay Shah was not present in the BCCI for sure,
Absolutely.
and always want to market um, the world's biggest stadium. I don't know how much of a beating the pitches are going to take over there. We'll have the five T20s between India and England over there, and then the IPL matches as well. So maybe they could have just rolled out Ahmedabad and tried to accommodate the other venues as well in Mohali, Hyderabad, and in Jaipur. But nevertheless, as I mentioned, none of the teams will be playing home games as in such, and it'll just be a cluster and caravan movement taking place between all the teams. And one aspect that I was slightly disappointed was with the mention of the crowds not being allowed at all in the stadium for starters. Um, that seemed a bit of a illogical thing considering you allowed 50% spectators in this India England series, uh, and the crowds are going to come into the T20 series as well. Of course, the one day series is going to be played behind closed doors in Pune because of the rise in the number of cases in Maharashtra. But they could have considered revising the percentage of the crowds to be allowed in the stadiums at least, because it is returning to India after 1 year or so, more than 1 year, I would say, in a couple of years since the IPL was held in India. So that was a surprising bit. Uh, Apart from that, I hope that the biobubble environment is maintained at multiple venues um, in the strictest manner possible, and there are no loopholes like we saw with the PSL. And hope everything goes on fine, and we get to see a good competitive IPL like we saw in UAE last time. I think that was the most competitive IPL where everyone of us were on the edge of our seats, and until the 56th match, we did not know which teams would be making it to the playoffs. So just hope that the quality of cricket uh, continues to remain of that level.
Oh yes. So yeah, just one final point on that crowds part. I've read somewhere that the kind of number of sixes that are going to be hitting the stands and the number of times the ball would be actually rolling across various hands. They thought that's also apparently one major factor. Definitely not very logical to me, but having said that, it's a reality probably we have to live in. Nonetheless, it's on the conservative side, and I think I don't mind. I think I'll take it. Uh, so, yep, that's pretty much it from our side, guys, today. We'll be back with few more reviews of few games that happened in the last week or two, and also on the India versus South Africa women's series happening now. So that's a word, guys. Thanks a lot for listening, and yep, you know the drill. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.
Thank you, guys.